A few years ago, UPI was launched at the Eiffel Tower in Paris. Last week, Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal launched UPI acceptance at Galeries Lafayette in Nice, one of France's most iconic retail destinations. But as I was reading all those headlines, I kept coming back to one question. Why France? Europe has some of the world's largest economies. Germany's economy is bigger. Italy and Spain attract millions of tourists every year. So why did France become the first major European launchpad for India's payment system? As it turns out, the answer starts long before UPI existed. It starts with a company most Indians have probably never heard of, Lyra. The National Payments Corporation of India, better known as NPCI, did not enter France cold. They partnered with Lyra Collect, a major French payment infrastructure giant that handles the secure data lines, connecting millions of physical point-of-sale card terminals directly to traditional banks. Crucially, Lyra has run a deeply integrated subsidiary inside India for over 15 years, managing core network connections for institutions like the Indian Post Office. The institutional trust and software compatibility between Indian engineers and French infrastructure were already established. Consider the retail environment. A country like Germany has a fragmented retail culture that historically leans heavily towards cash. France, by contrast, possesses a highly centralized digital-first luxury retail market. Outbound Indian tourist spending follows the Pareto principle. 80% of total transaction volume is concentrated in a tiny fraction of locations, specifically high-end shopping corridors and iconic landmarks. By target locking Galeries Lafayette in Nice, which houses over 600 independent luxury brands under a single merchant system, UPI captures maximum transaction value with minimal deployment friction. And of course, there's the regulatory angle. Navigating Europe's banking and compliance frameworks is a notorious bureaucratic hurdle. By securing authorization through a single powerhouse infrastructure partner inside France's highly centralized banking system, India found a practical way into the Eurozone without having to build every relationship from scratch. Now, that doesn't automatically unlock the rest of Europe, but it does create a framework that could potentially be replicated elsewhere. Okay, now the obvious question. Why would a sophisticated Western banking system even care about an Indian payment protocol? To understand that, you have to look at how the West built its payment systems versus how India built its infrastructure. The super interesting thing is that India and many Western countries approach digital payments very differently. In most countries, digital payments evolved through private companies, card networks, and banks building their own systems. India took a different approach. It built a common digital infrastructure and allowed banks, fintech companies, and payment apps to build on top of it. UPI is built on an open architecture protocol. It is not an app, it is a public utility platform owned by a consortium of banks. And because it is non-proprietary, any bank, startup, or digital wallet can build on top of it. This open design allows for instant bank-to-bank account settlement without intermediate clearing houses holding on to the funds. And UPI was engineered for extreme scale and absolute merchant friendliness. It eliminates the heavy hardware costs of traditional credit card swiping terminals by replacing them with simple, zero-cost QR codes. In India, this architecture allowed digital payments to scale to over 14 billion transactions a month in less than a decade. The reason UPI attracts global attention isn't because it's another consumer payment app. It's simply because very few countries have managed to build a real-time payment system that operates at this scale. Now, countries looking at UPI are not necessarily trying to copy India wholesale. They're trying to understand how an open digital infrastructure can support an entire economy at massive scale. Okay, but I have to separate the structural potential from the immediate reality. Is this expansion as massive as the current headlines make it sound? The short answer is no, not yet. A successful launch at a luxury department store in Nice does not equal nationwide adoption in France. The Eurozone remains an incredibly difficult market to penetrate. Credit card habits are deeply entrenched among European customers, and traditional European banks have very little incentive to aggressively promote a foreign public protocol that disrupts existing payment habits. We must also recognize that different regions want completely different components of the India stack. France is primarily experimenting with merchant acceptance. The goal is straightforward: allow Indian tourists to pay more easily at participating locations. Now, Cyprus is taking a different approach. There, the focus is remittances and making it easier to move money between Cyprus and India. Singapore's integration is different again. focusing on interoperability between payment systems. Even within Europe, countries are not adopting the same version of UPI. They're experimenting with different pieces of the ecosystem. Additionally, using UPI abroad does not mean transactions are completely free. Please remember that. While the payment experience may feel seamless, foreign exchange conversion costs still exist. Cross-border settlements still exist. Visa and MasterCard's dominance over global commerce also remains largely unchanged. Europe is not rushing to replace its financial infrastructure overnight. This international expansion is not a casual convenience feature for wealthy travelers. It is a long-term geopolitical and economic strategy. For decades, India's technology sector was defined by IT services, exporting software engineers to write code for foreign corporations. The global export of UPI marks a fundamental shift from exporting IT labor to exporting entire technological systems and global standards. This is the ultimate expression of digital public infrastructure as a tool of technological soft power. Now, if UPI succeeds in establishing cross-border bank-to-bank corridors, the economic implications could be significant. Today, a substantial portion of global digital commerce still flows through a relatively small number of international payment networks. Any country that wants greater control over how money moves through its economy eventually has to think about the infrastructure underneath those transactions. If the UPI succeeds internationally, the opportunity is not simply lower cost for tourists. It is the possibility of creating more direct connections between banking systems, reducing dependence on multiple layers of intermediaries, and giving countries greater flexibility in how digital payments are routed. So success looks like a world where non-Western nations use Indian-engineered architecture to run their own digital payment ecosystems and cross-border financial connections. So do not look at the Nice launch as a finished product. Look at it as a successful field test. The system has demonstrated that it can navigate European regulatory requirements, connect with existing banking infrastructure, and support real-world transactions inside a major European market. France has not adopted UPI nationwide. Europe is not replacing Visa and MasterCard tomorrow. But for a country that spent decades importing technology from the West, the fact that a major European nation is now experimenting with payment infrastructure built in India may be the most interesting part of this story, and that is why France matters. If this episode helped you see the story behind the headline, do subscribe to Tech Brew with Vandana Nair, and I'll see you in the next one.